Welcome back
All
to the
right.
daily close. We have a full house today. We've got Gojo Crypto, BASXD Buddha, Crypto-pleb, and myself, OX Infinite Bid. How are we all doing today, guys?
Living the dream, my man. Living the dream.
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Great, man. Great.
That's good.
Enjoying the market.
That's good. Well, we've got
Enjoy the
some
market.
we've got some exciting news, exciting events that are happening in the crypto market right now. That we're going to be covering today. So this is hopefully going to be an exciting and very informative stream for you guys. Let's start off with a crypto-pleb.
Yeah, of course. Uh, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of things, a lot of exciting things we're gonna be talking about, but we also got some good to know things will be in here too. So please bear with me as we go through. But just for everyone to know beforehand, this is not financial advice. So do your own research. But just jump into things. Guys, you probably have been hearing about in the market already, but I think there's quite a few, a bit more scrutiny coming onto the market nowadays, and particularly with some of the mega large banks out there that are starting to move into the cryptocurrency space. They're starting to provide these kind of options to potential buyers so they can diversify their portfolio to take on more risk and potentially more return in this field. But with that comes a higher level of regulation because, as we know, this area can be um, so volatile. The Basel Committee on Banking, they are actually talking about requiring certain financial institutions to toughen uh, their capital rules for any asset. And outside of currencies that are pegged to the U.S. dollar, like a USDC and USDT, other unpegged or non or stable coins may have to take on a risk weight of 1,250%, which would be the toughest standards for any banks. What do you guys think about this?
Um, so I'm not too familiar with the Basel committee and how that ties in with
Hmm,
traditional finance. Um,
sure.
what does that actually mean? So what's the risk weight that you're talking about there?
Yeah. So Basel III, what it does, and actually I'll move over to something summarized by McKinsey. There's a regular standards that helps banks manage the amount of risk they take on through the use of their capital for a certain, such as risk management, how much money that they need to have stored
Right.
as like a collateral of sorts in case maybe in a particular derivative or asset they invest in, if the underlying value were to fail, if they have cash backed up to ensure that they as an institution themselves do not fail. And Basel is just the industry standard to make sure all banks fall in line with this, so we don't have a repeat of the 2007-8 financial crisis.
Okay. Okay. Got it. And how does this affect, like the retail investors like, myself here? What does this mean for us?
Mm.
Well, that's actually a very good question. I would think that for retail investors in both the cryptocurrency markets and the financial markets, it's well, it depends on the person. If you are going into, well, there's two ways I would answer that. One way is that uh, we think that with more financial institutions getting into the cryptocurrency markets, that with that higher level of investment, that we should see a higher increase in price because there's more money, more people are at the table. But this, with any kind of regulations, means less people can play. So we might not get as big of a increase into the market as one might have hoped. It does make things safer for traditional finance people, knowing that the banks that they're working with and the hedge funds uh, aren't going to go to zero when and if any kind of assets are in rug at any point in time. Security, but also it's not going to get as much of a bump as they were hoping. I think
Okay. Okay. So
yeah.
it's basically just increasing the sort of risk. Sorry, um,
Threshold.
de
Yeah,
increasing the risk threshold um,
yeah,
for retail investors to invest into crypto. Is that right?
For retail, it increases the risk threshold for financial institutions who are offering these assets for retail investors to jump into.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It actually kind of brings me on to the next point. So with the Basel III coming in and it's helping to help regulate the market and make sure banks don't over leverage themselves into bad positions. That being said, hedge funds are actually expected to increase their holdings of crypto over the next 5 years by 7%. So that means that even with these regulations, large players, I guess what I would like to say are market makers out there, are they are going to start integrating this more into their portfolios. I think this is going in the direction that we're hoping for a more, more inclusive
Right. Right.
economy or market for the cryptocurrency space.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be absolutely interesting. And we already knew that like certain companies like Skybridge or other ones like I think there's like quite a few here that have been jumping into this space already.
Yeah.
It's actually quite interesting. So, but I think with the Basel III, plus with large companies who are quite careful about this, we should have a pretty even balance uh, of these financial institutions into this cryptocurrency market. Just
Sure.
my opinion.
It's quite exciting, isn't it? Because if you compare to 2017, people were saying that, there's a lot of financial institution investment and um, people outside of crypto investing into this space. But compared to what's been happening in 2020 and 2021, that kind of fails in comparison to what's happening now, where you have people like BlackRock, you've got people like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan talking about
That's right.
getting into crypto investing, Bitcoin and Ethereum in particular. You've got people like Grayscale with Michael
Yes.
Saylor. You've got Elon Musk tweeting on Twitter. So it's really becoming very mainstream now, isn't it, crypto? So it's interesting to see that all these institutions are looking to um, invest. What was the figure? 5% of their portfolio?
Seven.
7%
Yeah, 7% in the next 5 years.
in the next 5 years.
Uh,
So
Equates to 312 billion in digital currencies across the industry.
that's
That's
that's crazy. So
these are big numbers.
very exciting times ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I'll kind of speed over just a few other points I thought are quite interesting that everyone should know about. One would actually be the adoption of El Salvador adopting
This is very
Bitcoin
big
as legal
news.
tender.
Mm.
This is huge. It just came out quite recently. They voted 62 to 84 of possible votes said yes to go ahead for a historic decision by a Central American or by any country for that matter. Using this as a currency. Uh, so this is, I think, welcome news, but I think at the same time, like it says right down here quite clearly, some people think that this feels like just a bad idea to have two currency regimes. It's good and bad. In what I've seen and what I believe, and I'm not an economist, but a lot of South American countries are facing some inflation and as Bitcoin in itself is more or less a deflationary asset, that this may be a way for many of the citizens to be able to secure their money against the eventual value erosion that comes with inflation. That being said, the other concern that kind of comes up is the fact that actually here is that within El Salvador, 70% of the people in El Salvador don't even have bank accounts. And as you may know, without bank accounts, you can't we can't get into the cryptocurrency
It's quite an
market.
astounding
DeFi.
figure, isn't it?
That's pretty
70%.
crazy. Yeah.
Massive.
Yes. So maybe this could help El Salvador. If people realize that they can get this asset to make large gains or to preserve themselves against inflation, that they'll push them to open up accounts and help better regulate the entire traditional finance economy within the country. Or nothing might happen. This might just become another asset and what this article here warns that holders of BTC in Russia and China will just cash out their earnings in El Salvador, draining out all the U.S. dollars, and that's without that in the market. That leaves El Salvador with its main currency, which it might tank the economy quite significantly. So I think I'm going to watch over this quite closely. But
I
this is
think
something to be. It's a greenfield, absolutely
yeah,
fresh.
yeah.
So
I mean,
yep.
it's the first of any country to actually adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, I believe, and a lot of the South American countries are following suit or want to follow suit. You've seen on Twitter that all these presidents of the South American countries are putting the Bitcoin laser eyes on their profile pictures,
Yes.
um, which means they're very pro Bitcoin. Um, yeah, we'll just have to see how it pans out, really. I mean, no one can really say if it's going to work or not. I think you know there's two sides to a coin, right? There's obviously
Sure.
pros and cons, but nonetheless it is massive news, and it's pretty monumental in the sort of like the moving forward of the crypto space. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, I mean, that's my part. Some big things have been moving in this market.
Yeah,
And I think it's quite interesting, but I'll keep reporting on it and come back to it again.
cool, cool. So some exciting events happening in the crypto space. Thank you, Crypto-pleb. I think Gojo Crypto is going to talk to us a little bit about Bitcoin and what's happening in that world, especially with Taproot. Um, so take it away.
Yeah. Thanks. With Bitcoin, I guess just listening to your news, Crypto-pleb. It's a revisit of what many consider is the big brother of cryptocurrency, right? Bitcoin has always been king. Um, this kind of upgrade, this kind of change is something that has been long overdue. I think the last time that we saw Bitcoin go through an upgrade was in August of maybe 2017.
Yeah,
And they made that change. Um, it was referred to as a civil war, right? Because the changes that they wanted to implement were not really, I mean, it wasn't a vast majority that agreed to this change.
was that the hard fork of
It
Bitcoin
was
back
a
in
hard fork. Yeah.
2017?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember there was a lot of hard forks back in 2016, 2017. I think Bitcoin Cash is one hard fork. You've got Bitcoin Gold, which I believe was in 2017 as well. Um, but since then, there's not
Mm.
been that too many updates. So, um, an update to Bitcoin is not something that you see all the time. So it's pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when we talk about upgrades, we typically think of things like our iOS or our Windows getting upgrades. And then the question that comes, how do you upgrade a system that's decentralized? Like,
Right.
how does that even work? If you
Good
have
point.
multiple, right? Because if you think there are five pillars, I think if we were to think about the decentralized structure of Bitcoin, you have the miners, you've got the devs, you've got users, you've got nodes, and then you've got businesses on top of that. So unless these five go through with a vote and there's an overwhelming majority of an agreement of a change in the system, it might never go through. And you might be interested to know it's actually January 2018 was when one of Bitcoin's core developers, Greg Maxwell, initially released the Taproot update proposal. This was in
Oh,
2018,
Wow.
right? So it's 3.5 late years later that we're seeing. It was just this June 12th that finally we've reached an agreement that we want to go through with this. And then now we've got the support to lock in the activation of Taproot, which is scheduled for November later this year.
Sure, sure. Um,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about Taproot and what it's actually trying to
yeah.
achieve.
Yeah. If I were to simplify Taproot, the two main focuses are, I think, increased privacy for multi-signature transactions, and then the second would be the potential of smart contracts on Bitcoin.
Wow,
It's
okay.
huge. Wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
scalability. Crazy, right? Because that's always been one of the biggest criticisms of Bitcoin is
Right.
it is slow, it's inefficient, it's resource hungry. So as the leading cryptocurrency in the world, what can we do to improve it. So the challenge of scalability was one that they wanted to tackle. I don't know if I'm going to get too technical, so you let me know if this is a little
Bring it
too
on, man.
complex. If I were to think about, for example, one of the main things that makes Bitcoin fantastic as a cryptocurrency is there's a sense of privacy, right? So if
Right.
I were to make any kind of transaction on the blockchain, we have a private key that allows us to make the transaction, and then we have a public key that allows, or I guess it's your Bitcoin address, which can be seen by the public but cannot ever be linked back to yourself. So you have a key to enter, but you also have a specific code that signifies that you've made this transaction, but
Right.
the two will never be connected. That's possible because of something called the elliptic curve digital signature algorithm.
Mm.
It's the
Okay.
easy. It's simply like if you were to think about it simply, it is what makes it mathematically impossible for anyone on the blockchain to derive a person's private key from their public key, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
so that's what it is. But that's the actual that's what they're going to change. They're going to change the ECDSA into something called a Schnorr signature, which
Interesting.
makes have you guys heard of the Schnorr?
No, the first time
First
hearing
time
this.
I've heard it. Yeah.
Really? What the Schnorr signature is supposed to do is make it so that any kind of simple transaction, so a one-on-one transaction, will be indistinguishable from multi-signature transactions. So they will all look the same. Right now, there are certain identifiers that can make complex transactions stand out. Let's say if we are thinking about smart contracts, for example, it's very different to just a one-on-one transaction.
Right.
So what it means is by updating from the ECDSA to the Schnorr signatures, you get more anonymity, but also without risking the transparency of these transactions.
So, okay. So, am I right in saying it works in the same way as a multi-sig, where you have multiple people who sign before a transaction can actually be mined on the blockchain and go through?
Yes.
But
Okay.
instead of these signers being public, the signers are actually completely private somehow. Is that
Yeah.
how it works?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
That's
anonymous but transparent is the way to think, or the way we can think about it, right? You keep the anonymity, but still keep the transparency of this.
okay. Okay.
Uh,
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
yeah.
See what you can see what people are doing, but you just have no idea who's doing it.
I think
Essentially.
I think that's a big narrative with Bitcoin as well, because Bitcoin's always been about decentralization, right? And Ethereum might not be the most decentralized project in the space, although it is the most used
Sure.
currently right now.
Mm.
But you know the sort of narrative of privacy with things like Monero and Zcash, um, you know that's something that Bitcoin cannot provide right now. So if they are successful in implementing the Schnorr, is it Schnorr?
Schnorr.
Um, yeah, the Schnorr project, then that would be pretty big. Complete anonymous transactions across the blockchain. Um, that would be pretty big.
That would be pretty good. That would be big. I would wonder how that would actually relate to a lot of the regulations that would probably come after that. I know Crypto-pleb just talked about regulations and
Yeah.
stuff, but
Mm.
you know, private transactions, people are really, at least in the regulatory space, concerned about money laundering, or you know,
Yeah.
all these exploits that happens with all these sort of rug pulls in the space. So like,
Really lucky.
yeah, I think it's going to be sort of a balance, and see, keen to see how that will unfold, and how regulators would actually respond to that.
Yeah, I mean another big
Yeah.
topic to talk about there. Um,
Yeah.
well, I don't think any of us really know what will happen in terms of regulation and how the place will be regulated in the end, but it's definitely a big
For
topic
sure.
right now.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's actually a
Yeah.
big thing. Yeah, like it is. I guess they're saying it's like a big race between, like for example, the FBI and between criminals. That has to deal particularly with Bitcoin and encryption. Like recently, there was I heard about like an FBI. They struck back in the past week with a pair of victories where they were able to seize almost $4 million dollar ransom in Bitcoin from Russian hackers that extorted from the American pipeline operator. If you guys heard about that story before, there was a hack against a pipeline operator. I think that caused a few power shortages, and they had to pay to get their way out of it. And the FBI were able to get in, and find many of these suspects. So like it's always a race between the two. That's gonna carry on, I think, in perpetuity, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
I think
Okay.
I heard about that. Yeah. I thought it was Litecoin though. I don't know if it was Bitcoin, but yeah.
Yeah.
I did read something about that.
Okay, cool. That's sorry, did you want to talk about anything else on Taproot, Gojo?
No. I just wanted to close actually by saying that it's really hard to affect if we're thinking about retail investors like ourselves and how this is going to affect us. I mean, even if, for example, Taproot were to deliver on 50% of its promises, it can significantly change the way that we view and use Bitcoin. So ultimately, the movement and the price of cryptocurrencies is always dependent on practical use cases. And this is basically just adding to the utility that comes with what most people saw as just a store of value. So that in itself is big. But the upgrade can potentially either propel Bitcoin into mainstream finance, or it might just make it a direct competitor to some existing cryptocurrencies that have smart contracts in place already, right? So it's really hard to say at this point how the market will react, but that's something certainly we should be looking out for, especially in November.
Oh, okay. Okay, excellent. So
Definitely.
November is the date to mark in your calendar. It could be a massive change for Bitcoin and how people view Bitcoin. So again, some very, very exciting news. Cool. So let's move on to BASE Buddha because I know he's very excited to introduce, one of the topics that he's quite passionate about as well. So I believe you BASE Buddha, you're going to be talking about the Bitcoin mining and the Bitcoin hash rate in particular. Is that right?
Yes, I am. So, I mean, it does relate a lot with what Gojo talked about, where, so we see this in crypto Twitter quite often. Bitcoin is king. Everything really revolves around Bitcoin. We see that even more so now with Bitcoin dominance going back to like about 45 at the moment, and all the altcoins really just kind of at the mercy of how Bitcoin is moving. So that's another reason why I think I want to focus on the Bitcoin narrative right now, specifically around Bitcoin mining and its importance, as well as right now, I have in front of me a chart or a graph of the hash rate of Bitcoin, basically. So I want to start off with this because hash rate is a very clear indicator of Bitcoin, specifically for two very clear points. We'll see in this graph that around we had the first sort of bull run, not first, but the bull run back in 2017. We see the hash rate continuing growing from 2017 up into where we are right now in 2021. And it's just been a gradual, I won't say gradual, actually exponential growth. The more and more miners are entering the mining market. Now, what this actually does is it actually pushes the hash rate up. So, hash rate, if just to remind everyone, hash rate is basically just refers to the combined computational power that's used to process and mine Bitcoin. And specifically on transactions that use proof of work. So that's basically right now Bitcoin and Ethereum. Ethereum right now before the 2.0 upgrade that comes later when they move over to proof of stake. But yeah, so it's signifying this sort of computational power. Now, reason why it goes up though is because the more people, the more miners that get involved in the space, the more power, the more processing is done to actually mine Bitcoin. So this is a very clear indication of like how many more miners are entering the space. And the reason why hash rate, the second point, reason why hash rate is important is because because there are more actors, it also means that it's harder for a bad actor to actually do anything, negative in the space. Because basically with proof of work, you need at least 51% of the the computational power to actually do anything negative. So, right. So essentially means that the harder it will be for anyone to actually do anything negative in the space.
So
as long as the hash
basically,
rate.
the more players there are in the space, the harder it is for someone to actually own 51% of the mining hash rate and do anything malicious to the network. Is that right?
Exactly.
51
Yeah.
seizure, something like that. Yeah.
Seizure.
Yeah,
I don't know about
seizure.
that word,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Or attack.
basically,
Yeah.
that is the point. And now, right now, Bitcoin mining is a massive narrative because a few different things happen in the space. The first one that would really signify this is Elon Musk's first tweet about Bitcoin and how basically he originally tweeted that they would accept Bitcoin as a payment for any of their vehicles. But what he tweeted, actually, I want to say around May 13th, actually, he was saying that, just where it says right here, that Tesla suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. And the main reason for that is because they're really concerned about mining that's done with non-sustainable energy sources. And so, right after this tweet, we saw a massive dump in the market. It was one of the main things, in addition to China FUD and all these other things that people are speculating. But this has become a ever-growing hot topic. And we even see just actually this past week, Elon tweeting that what he would consider an acceptable position or situation for Tesla to begin resuming Bitcoin transactions. And we see another spike in the Bitcoin price. So this is just one aspect, right? What is also sparked is a lot of questions around how Bitcoin mining is done globally. And it's common knowledge, at least in the crypto space, that China is the majority of the mining across the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 75%.
75%, yeah. And recently, the government in China has basically been cracking down on Bitcoin mining. And so one of the most recent provinces that actually had to shut down was Sichuan. There's an article basically saying that Sichuan, they had to shut down around 26 mining farms. Now, what I just talked about earlier regarding hash rate, what this actually means is that when a lot of these miners in China, they're actually shutting down, and they're looking at alternatives, maybe going abroad to somewhere like the U.S., like Florida or Texas,
Like Canada and Iceland, right?
Yeah,
like cold places.
To resume their mining. Now, what we end up seeing as a result is that the hash rate goes down because obviously these big players are no longer mining.
Right.
Another big topic around this space right now is that El Salvador, Crypto-pleb just talked about a few minutes ago, is that 2 weeks ago at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, El Salvador announced that they would make Bitcoin legal tender. And what's become a really funny and interesting meme is that what they're actually going to do is develop geothermal mining facilities, aka they're going to try to utilize power from their volcanoes to mine Bitcoin. And after that, there's all these like volcano memes with like pictures of Bitcoin spewing from like a volcano. Became a massive thing.
Creating jobs, right, from the volcano. I saw some of those memes too.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolute heat coming out.
Literal, man, literally.
I saw actually an interesting video clip where there was energy being produced from the volcanoes, and it was sort of there was like water vapor. I'm not sure if you saw that video clip.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of
Oh,
water
no,
vapor coming out from one of these engines that was somehow
really?
connected to the volcano. So
There's
there's
fume power.
no doubt that there are renewable energy sources and ways to actually mine Bitcoin.
Mm,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, that's pretty smart. It's a pretty smart move from El Salvador in that respect.
Oh, definitely. Definitely a smart move. And I think El Salvador is just one of the sort of initial players in terms of trying to find other sustainable means to power sources to mine Bitcoin.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a more and more ever-growing topic and concern. This crackdown in China, though, is kind of funny because we all know Michael Saylor as being sort of this Bitcoin maxi. In this article, he talks about how this China crackdown is really just a nuisance for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
He says here, China's crackdown in mine is a tragedy for China, a nuisance for Bitcoin, and a windfall for North American Bitcoin miners.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think people. I mean, this is one of the problem that Bitcoin poses as a decentralized form of store of value or currency, right? As soon as these Chinese miners moved out from China, um, the hash rate dropped significantly,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that had a massive impact on how the Bitcoin blockchain actually worked.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, people say that Bitcoin is the most decentralized, currency within the crypto space, but it's still pretty centralized. If you think, 75% of the miners have control over the Bitcoin network. If they're down, then no one can use the network. So it's essentially decentralized centralization. um,
That's actually a big issue. That article I read that brought up that yeah, with 75% of them being in China, that brings up like a concentration issue.
Right.
So like you said, yeah, if because of the high concentration, if it blacks out, we're in trouble. So maybe I think that's kind of maybe part and parcel of as people, regulations in China goes up and people are pushed out to countries like Iceland and Canada or more favorable areas. That's more or less a more physical correction of sorts for Bitcoin. Because
Mm.
I think I think we'll see more dips in the price of Bitcoin, but it's inherently going to go back up as people find easier places to operate.
right, right. Um, I just want to change sort of like flip sides now because we talked about Taproot and we talked about Bitcoin mining and hash rate. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Ethereum and what's happening on that network.
Mm.
Ethereum's massive platform. If you think about Bitcoin being a store of value, Ethereum is probably um, like the currency in the space, right? It's the most likely crypto to get mass adoption, especially within finance. You've got all this DeFi stuff going on. Um,
Right.
but what's interesting at the moment, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this video now have heard, the London fork is coming very soon in I think
Mm.
next month in July, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
quite a big big news event. I think there's going to be several changes to how Ethereum is going to operate in terms of gas fees and that sort of thing. I think we've all experienced, um, 20, 30, maybe even like up to $100 transactions on Ethereum, which is ridiculous. Um,
Mm.
so I just wanted to go over that real quick and how this is affecting us and retail investors as well. So essentially, this hard fork that's coming in July is called the London hard fork, um, and it's essentially you know preparing the Ethereum network to um, it's preparing the Ethereum network for the next hard fork, which is known as Serenity, I think, Ethereum, which is Ethereum 2.0, where Ethereum will be moving from proof of work to proof of stake. Um, so right now, as BASXD Buddha mentioned that proof of work is what's currently dominating the market right now, where you have to physically mine these coins. Proof of stake changes the game, where people actually stake coins to actually keep the network going and keep the network running. So it's it becomes a lot more efficient for the environment, which is obviously a massive social topic right now. So before Ethereum 2.0, that the hard fork is going to come, and the main changes this London fork is going to bring is the change in gas fees. So not necessarily the price of gas fees, but how miners are paid and how miners are rewarded for completing transactions on the blockchain. So right now we have sort of like a bidding war, right, for gas, where the person who bids the most gas gets their transaction mined the fastest. So EIP 1559, which is also the code name for the London hard fork, is going to implement a system where gas fees are going to be more equal for everyone. There's going to be a base fee which does not change, and so the miners cannot choose between which transaction to mine. You are able to provide a tip with that base fee, but that base fee will also part of that fee will also be burned, which makes Ethereum a deflationary asset, which is massive. Yeah, it is a game changer. It's a game changer. And this is all in preparation for ETH 2.0, which is the next fork called Serenity. So yeah, I mean the transaction fees won't necessarily be cheaper, but it'll be more fair and more consistent across the network. There's also another feature that the hard fork is going to implement, which I believe is it's sort of like a time bomb, where and I know it sounds
ominous at
yes,
best.
it sounds very dangerous, but it's a difficulty time bomb. So here you see there's a new EIP going to be implemented after the EIP 1559, or planned to be implemented, which makes mining Ethereum increasingly more difficult. So similar to what you have with the Bitcoin halving, mining Ethereum on proof of work will become more difficult, and in turn will decentivize people who are still mining on proof of work to move over to proof of stake.
They're pushing the pole.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is what Vitalik and his team over at Ethereum are trying to do. So two big features are going to be implemented within the coming, I'd say 6-7 months. But with these kind of things, there's always delays. It gets postponed all the time. So who knows? But the initial or the planned date for the London hard fork is in July sometime. So a few weeks from now. So that's it basically. There's some big changes coming for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think it's going to be interesting to see, which sort of event is going to top which. I do think the flippening, i.e. ETH,
the flipping
becoming bigger than Bitcoin will happen. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, yeah, to your point, Melcat's law, right? So the network effect. I think Ethereum being the global settlement layer and its ability to scale, it's just going to sort of just be a byproduct. The whole flipping is going to be a byproduct of that that feature. We don't know when. I personally, I think it's definitely going to happen. I just don't know, what point. It's very exciting.
The only thing is if updates like Taproot, where you improve, for example, smart contracts, or if the state of smart contracts on Bitcoin does improve, it leads to the potential of new apps being built on top of Bitcoin. Again, hard to say at this point. The way that things are going, it does look like the flippening will happen. I am a little bit of a Bitcoin maxi myself, so I.
Good man.
There he is.
I'm just wondering how the rest of the world is going to be able to take this on with the increased regulations and scrutiny in multiple different countries. Countries like Korea are very risk adverse and telling exchanges to delist high risk assets, which is causing these assets to absolutely plummet, particularly in the DeFi space. To also India waving their ban hammer again about if we can't control it, we're going to get rid of it, or finding other ways to restrict access to certain assets. And so while this is all happening, there's also a whole lot of countries, as well as China, who are cracking down on the Bitcoin or the miners. All of this is running in tandem too. So that's all the moving parts in synchronization.
Yeah. I think the India FUD this year is equivalent to the China FUD in 2017.
It's real.
China FUD, I think China banned Bitcoin about 10 times in 2017,
Yeah.
and then subsequently unbanned it.
It's
There's
Bitcoin mining is like a 1.7 billion market, I think, and
yeah.
overall, it's big money.
Personally, I just think that the Chinese government want a part in crypto. I don't see any institution who isn't looking into buying crypto right now, or buying something or some sort of asset within the crypto space. So even with all these bans going on, I think it's just going to be temporary. And
Sure.
also it's very, very unlikely that it goes to zero.
Always find a way.
Having said that, please don't take any of what we've said today as financial advice. Um, we're just four guys on the internet talking about what we think about the crypto space. So, with that said, I think we will call it a day here. So thank you guys for coming on and talking about crypto and sharing your knowledge here. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next video. And as always, guys, may the pump be with you.
May the pump be with you. Yes, yes. Oh, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Hit that bell button too. Don't forget
Definitely hit that like and subscribe button
that.
and turn on the bell notifications to be notified about all the alpha that's going on in the crypto space. And we'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.